Hi, I'm live. Welcome to everybody who was ever watching. And, hi, ready to go?
Yeah, I've disconnected because every...
What?
Oh, light, it's good. Good.
Am I connected? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, he says you're watching me. Okay. What am I speaking into?
No, it's normal.
Everything. And they're watching.
Yeah.
They're seeing me. There's an actual class happening.
You started it live, that's it.
Okay, we're live. Okay, good, we're live. Okay, it's today, well, it was the 11th of Nisan, which is the Rebbe's birthday. He was born on the 11th of Nisan. And by the way, just to note, my daughter had a baby boy today on the same day. So congratulations, Mazel Tov. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm happy. So we have this mimer, but whatever I show you on the camera is going to be backwards. I had a blackboard over here, but that doesn't work either. But the mimer will learn forwards. First of all, for those who are not familiar with a mimer, the idea of a mimer and the idea of a Rebbe are very connected. A Rebbe says a mimer. And that's when he first becomes a Rebbe, he's established that he is the Rebbe because he says a mimer. A mimer is not just like saying a lecture or saying a class or explaining something. Before a Rebbe says a mimer, everybody's singing, and it's a certain song that you sing, one of two or several songs. And there's a state of great dveikus, almost like a trance-like state that the Rebbe falls into. And everybody stands up, and when the Rebbe begins to speak, it's in this sing-song voice, and it seems like the Rebbe is in another world when he's speaking. We hear the mimer, people memorize it. We also have, if it was not on Shabbos or Yom Tov, a recording of it. And then it's written down. And when it's written down, some lines have to be added in to connect things together. And many of the Maimarim were then handed in to the Rebbe to edit. And the Rebbe wanted that it shouldn't just be a transcription of exactly what he said. Other Rebbes, before the Rebbe, they would write the mimer themselves. But the Rebbe wanted that his students, the chassidim, should write down the mimer and put the pieces together, add in some connecting lines and so on, and then we have to understand it. But we know that when we're understanding it, it's almost as though you were there at Mount Sinai and Moses is telling you what he just heard from God. That's the type of experience of the mimer. And the most amazing thing about it is that you can actually understand it. Something that just came into the world straight out of heaven, and we're understanding it now. So in this translation that I did, if you have this booklet or if you're looking at it on the website, in the translation, when I'm moving it into English, it's also not a verbatim translation. I'm adding in some connecting lines and some explanation here and there according to the footnotes or according to how we understand the mimer and so on. Trying very careful not to add in any of my own ideas. It's been edited by many people who know mimer very well. So that we're trying to take something that's really very super rational beyond us. It's like something that came straight out of heaven, and we're really trying to understand it, make sense of it. But you see, it's a different type of intellect that's happening over here. That's what I wanted to say about a mimer. Now, what's significant about this mimer? Well, first of all, the Rebbe said it on his birthday. He said it in 1978, a few months after he had a heart attack in 1977. And that year was a very special year for Maimarim. When the Rebbe spoke a mimer in those years, that one year, they were all very special. And this one especially is one of the classics. Let me give you just an overview. What are we going to be dealing with? Well, it's the question of the wise child. And the wise child is here considered like the archetype of wisdom. So really, we're asking, what is wisdom? What is true wisdom? That's a central, if not the central, question or theme of the Mimer. But on the way, we're also discussing the irrational, or what seems to be irrational, maybe super-rational, that we have mitzvahs, rituals that we do that we can't explain a reason for them. Whatever reason we do explain, it doesn't seem to really fit. And that's one of the things that's approached in this Mimer in a very, very fascinating way. We come to a whole different explanation of why we do mitzvahs than people are used to. Of course, since it's a Mimer, it's chassidic, we're thinking about God, and we come to another understanding, a deeper understanding of our relationship with God. And since it's a Mimer that's spoken just before Pesach, and it's something in the Haggadah, we come to a better understanding of this rebirth that happens every year on Pesach. And there's a Pesach every day. There's a rebirth every day. Okay, so let's get to it. We're talking the question, the problem with the wise child. And it starts off with a verse in Veschanan, Deuteronomy. If tomorrow your child asks you, what are the testimonies, the decrees, and the judgments, okay, that's, I don't know what other translations use, which God our God has commanded you. And in the Haggadah, this question turns up as the question of the wise child. So there's this four different places, four different types of questions, well, three different questions that are in the Torah. And from these, the sages deduce that there are really four kinds of children, four types of questions that children could be asking at the Seder. This turns out to be the question of the wise child. And we're trying to figure out what's so wise about this question. So, on the contrary, it doesn't seem wise. The child doesn't know what mitzvahs are. And he's telling us, what mitzvahs? Well, what's so wise about that? That's not wisdom at all. If he's wise, he should understand what mitzvahs are. And the Rebbe does an interesting thing over here. He says, from the answer to the child, you can tell more about what the question is. The answer to the child, you tell, well, God took us out of Egypt. Like the kid didn't know that. What's so wise about a kid doesn't even know God took us out of Egypt. Since he took us out of Egypt, so therefore we have to do what he says. The wise child should know that we have to do what God says. And then you tell him that it's for our own good. Well, the child didn't know it's for our own good. And besides which, is that really, if he's a wise child, is he really asking, like, what's in it for me? Is this for my own good? Is that what the question's about? And then he says, now this is a really interesting one. He's got his kid brother, I don't know, his kid brother, could be his older brother, I don't know, the wicked child sitting next to him. The wicked child, why is he wicked? Because he says, Ma ha'avoda zos lachem. Why do you people go through all this trouble? And since he says, for you people, lachem, for you, it's you people that do it, he's excluding himself from everybody else, and therefore he's denied a basic principle of the Torah. What's the basic principle? That we are a people. He's denying that we're a people, because I'm not part of you. Okay. So, therefore he's wicked. But just a minute. Here, this wise child says, what are the testimonies, decrees, and judgments which God our God has commanded? You! You! He says also you, and he gets a pat on the head for it. His kid brother over here gets punched in the teeth for it, and he, as a nice boy, has a nice question, good, but he also says, commanded you. Okay, fine. He says, which God, our God. So he said, our God, it's our God. Fine, so he's including himself. So, but why doesn't he just say, God, our God commanded? Why does he have to put in that you? And this is a very, very interesting question, because it turns out, I hope we get to the end of the Mimer, that in this saying you, which makes him sound similar to the wicked child, actually demonstrates more than anything else, his wisdom. And there's a general question over here. It doesn't get asked explicitly in the Mimer, but at the end you can see it is a question. That it sounds ridiculous, but it really is a good question. there's a kid who never asks any questions. So year after year he doesn't ask any questions. Okay, we got to keep trying. There's a kid who every year asks, Mazos, what's this? It's a simple question. So every year the simple question means something else because it's simple. The wicked kid, he asks a question but he's not interested in the answer. So every year he comes back and asks the same question because the answer doesn't interest him. The wise child asks the same question year after year for 3,300 years. And every year you deal with him and you answer him and he comes back the next year and asks the same question. Okay, I'm telling you, you think it's a ridiculous question, but really it is a good question. There is a certain question you can ask that year after year, no matter how much you're answered, and it's a good answer, but nevertheless is a wise question. And we have to figure out why this is such a question. That's our problem. Okay. So if you've got the booklet, I'm on page 3 or 1B. 1B if you're looking at the web page. So the essential point because previous Rebbes of Lubavitch discussed this, and they basically make the point, well, before the Torah was given, how did you serve God? It was principally a spiritual service. God hadn't commanded you to do things. If you did something, it was something just to assist you in your meditation. So you'll sit there and you're meditating and you're doing something, but whatever you're doing isn't really worth anything. It's something you could throw out afterwards. The main point was just to assist you in achieving some sort of spiritual heights. Oh, Chai just brought me. Thank you very much for some water. And achieving some spiritual heights. After the Torah was given, things change. Now the whole thing becomes, God says do this, God says do that, God says don't do this, don't do, and everything becomes about things that you have to do. So for example, before the Torah was given, if you would go to the Passover by Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, okay, you'll sit there, okay, maybe they had matzahs there, but if they couldn't get all the matzahs, it wouldn't be such a big deal. The main thing was their meditation and their contemplation. You would see them in some great trance of some sort. This is New York. I'm sorry for all the honking outside. So, and that's fine, okay? After the Torah is given, if somebody sits there on the night of Passover and has all this tremendous mental focus and deep meditation, deep contemplation on everything that Passover means and everything that matzah means and so on, and then he finds out afterwards that the matzah was some sort of gluten-free rice stuff, it wasn't wheat, it wasn't spelt, it wasn't oats, it wasn't matzah. But he did everything in his mind. He was really there. I'm sorry. He hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah. He didn't eat matzah. He didn't do the Passover Seder because it's supposed to be on matzah. Sorry. On the other hand, you have another guy who decides, I'm not keeping Passover. I'm going to eat cheese sandwiches or on rye bread or French bread or pita or whatever. I'm going to have every type of chametz there on the table in front of me. I'm not eating matzah. I'm not making it. And what happens? Some Lubavitcher Bachram, boys or rabbis come break into his house and tie him up and force him to eat matzah. And he eats the matzah. He eats the matzah. Like he swallows the matzah. Then he says, really, I'm sorry. I should be eating matzah. It's Passover night tonight. I should be eating matzah and so on. Okay, and then they say, okay, we'll sit down and make a Seder. Then he gets to the point in the Seder to eat the matzah. They tell him, you can't make a blessing on the matzah. Why can't you make a blessing on it? Because you already fulfilled the mitzvah. He said, I didn't fulfill the mitzvah. You forced me to eat it. I was screaming, I don't want to eat it. No, I'm sorry. If you ate matzah, you ate matzah, you did the mitzvah. Okay, some mitzvahs you have to have a certain degree of kavanah, mental focus. And you have to know with matzah that it is the night of Passover tonight. Or it had to be on the night of Passover. But the point is that the main thing over here now, after the Torah is given, is the actual doing to get it done. So the question, it seems at least, the question of the wise son, which sounds like a wise question, is, what's this just do it stuff? You're talking about being closer to God. You're talking about bringing godliness into the world, bringing new light into the world, infinite light into the world. How do you do that? You meditate, contemplate. You know, this horseradish, it really gets in the way of my meditation. What are we doing with this stuff? The matzah, you know, it's not conducive to meditative state. I'd rather do other things. You know? No, we tell them the main thing is doing. He says, why? I don't get it. Explain that to me. So we explain that when we were taken out of Egypt, it was in order to give us this Torah. So being slaves and being taken out, that was all a preparation so that we could get the Torah. And what does Torah do? Torah gives you the capacity to bring God into the material realm, not just your spiritual meditation, but down here on earth to change the world in a very real way by doing things. And so the main thing becomes doing. Okay, that's how it would seem you would learn from how the other Rebbes of Lubavitch have explained. The Rebbe has 4 questions on this explanation. He says, you can't possibly understand that. That can't be what they mean. I give you 4 questions. Okay. First of all, you didn't explain the main question. Why did the child say that God has commanded you? Okay, he's saying, you know, he commanded when the Torah was given, but before the Torah was given. But so why doesn't he just say commanded us? He was also commanded. So what's the you about? Okay, that's question number 1. Secondly, if the question is what's all this doing mitzvahs, so say, what are all these mitzvahs that we do? He doesn't say that. He says, what are these testimonies, these decrees, these judgments? Why is he specifying them? Especially when you see the specification he's making is not why did we do mitzvahs with our hands, why do mitzvahs with our feet. He's talking about what are you supposed to have in mind when you do these mitzvahs. What are you supposed to have in mind? Well, if the mitzvahs are eidos, those are testimonies, then you have to have in mind that, I'm going in the wrong order. Let's go in the order, it's here in the mind. There are mitzvahs that are chukim, decrees. Decrees mean God said, listen, I made this decree, and this is the way it is, and you know, you can think all the way you want, but just because you don't understand it doesn't mean you don't do it. You just do it. Okay, that's the main thing. Just do it. That's what they're about. So, meaning that when you do these, for example, don't mix milk and meat and eat it. Please. Don't mix wool and linen and wear it. Bring this offering to the temple and burn it to a crisp. Okay. Some you eat, some you burn to a crisp. Okay. So you're going to give reason. Some things you're going to say, I don't understand. Okay, too bad for you. So you don't understand. Your thing is you do it. Okay. You don't have to understand. Those are called chukim. Then there are mitzvahs that are testimonies. Eidos. Testimony means that God created the world and God took us out of Egypt, and we do things to commemorate those. So those are commemorative. We keep Shabbos, that remembers the creation of heaven and earth, and also remembers that we were freed from slavery. Same thing with Passover, same thing with Sukkah, same thing with Tefillin, same thing with Tzitzit. So many mitzvahs that are testimonies. And when you do them, when you perform them, you have to know, or you should know, it's proper to know when you're doing them, this is a testimony on certain things. In some mitzvahs, that you have to know that. Then so these things we would probably not have come up with on our own. We'd find some other way to commemorate Passover, freedom, some other way other than eating flat bread that tastes like cardboard. We'd probably come up with something else to celebrate freedom. But this is the way we're told to do it, and once we're told, okay, I can see the connection, that makes sense. Then there are mitzvahs that are mishpatim. Mishpatim are judgments, like translated as judgments. And these are things that even if we hadn't been commanded, we'd probably end up doing them if we were sensible people. Because in order to have a stable society, you have to honor your parents, honor the elders. You can't steal. You have to share your toys. You have to be nice to each other. Okay, so those are things that we would have known otherwise, and we see that they have some sort of utility in keeping a stable world. So we see immediately purpose behind them. So if the child is asking the question, why are you doing? Why do we have to? What's it all about doing? Why is he putting it in this framework of different types of mental intent that you have in doing the mitzvahs? That just doesn't jive. Strange thing also is that when you answer this child, you don't say to him, and God commanded us all these decrees and testimonies and mitzvahs. You say, therefore, God commanded us all of these decrees, just decrees, and you leave out the other ones. Why did we leave out? That's another question. The fourth question is very interesting. The fourth question is that the wise child has put the mitzvahs out of order. It's like what I was explaining. Chukim are the ones that just forget about thinking about them. Well, you can try to think about them, but that's not the point at all. Your mind has nothing to do with it. Eidos are things, if you hadn't been commanded, we wouldn't have come up with, but now they make sense to us. Mishpatim, we would have come up with that on our own. So the proper order for them should be decrees, then testimonies, then judgments, from the least intellectual to the most rational, or the other way around, from the most rational, one way or the other. I wish I could use this board for you, but everything goes backwards on that board. So what does the wise child do? He puts them in an order that doesn't seem to make any sense. He puts the testimonies first, which sort of makes sense, then the ones that don't make any sense, and then the ones that can make complete sense. What kind of an order is that? Okay, so all these are keys to understanding. What the Rebbe does, the Rebbe wants to tell us a whole new interpretation over here, but the Rebbe doesn't want to say, I have a different interpretation. He doesn't do things that way. Instead, what he does is he goes back to a mimer of his father-in-law, who was the Rebbe before him, and he points out that his father-in-law is making a distinction between the first part of what the wise son is saying, the second part of what the wise son is saying. And he's pointing out that what his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, seems to be saying over here is the wise child has no problem that God commands us. It's just that he doesn't get this part of being commanded on this division of mitzvahs, of testimonies, decrees, and judgments. So he parses that, takes that apart. And that gives us a seed of an explanation. Okay. Now, by the way, there's a chat box there. If you're online, you should see the chat box. If you're on the Chabad.org website, which you can find either through our Facebook page or one of the articles or whatever. And there's a chat box over there. You can enter questions into chat box, and I really like questions. So please type them in, and then what will happen, I won't get to see all of them, but Chai, who's over here, will send me from those questions, and I'll be able to answer them. Okay, so the seed of the explanation behind this. First of all, let's understand, the Rebbe says, there's two elements to every mitzvah. One is the common denominator of all of them, God said to do it. That's what a mitzvah means. A mitzvah doesn't mean a good deed. A mitzvah means a commandment, something you were told to do. The creator of heaven and earth, which happens to include me and you, says, please, I'd like you to do this. Okay, so of course we'll do it. Right? Then there's another thing. They're divided into testimonies, decrees, judgments. Okay, so it means when you're going about doing the mitzvah, you have to have two things in mind. Any mitzvah. One thing is, I'm doing it because God says so. That's one thing. The other thing is, what's behind this mitzvah? There's a specific intent I have to have in mind with this mitzvah. I'm eating matzah because we left Egypt. Okay, I'm keeping Shabbos because the world was created, and we left Egypt. Okay. So there's a spiritual intent, something that's subjective that you have to have in mind. There's an objective one. God says it has to get done. I mean, he's God. He's created. He's the creator. He's the one sustaining existence. So if he says it has to get done, okay, I just get out of the way, make sure it gets done. Then there's another thing, something very subjective. How do I feel about this? And I have to be involved in my feeling, in my intent, in my understanding of this mitzvah. So which is called that the objective and subjective side of the mitzvah. You have to have both. And now the Rebbe says, so what the wise child is saying is he's saying exactly the opposite. He has no problem understanding. God says you have to do. And if God's desire is being carried out in this world, then God's totally there. I mean, God is there all the time, because otherwise the world wouldn't exist. But he's totally there because in a way that his desire is being carried out. So he's there in a way like, like you've got him engaged in the situation because this is his inner desire, it's being carried out. So he's totally there. That again, he says, I understand. You have to just do it. It's not even you have to do it. It has to get done, right? Because that's the way God is there. What I don't get is, how could God be there if I'm in the picture? If it's my own subjective experience, that I don't get. Then it's not totally God, because I'm involved in the picture. I'm involved in the situation. It's my subjective experience, and that's diluting the whole situation. Somebody just asked, where are we in the worksheet? Where are we in the worksheet? We're at the end of 3, and we're getting to about 4. That's in the actual translation of the Mimer. If you're in the book, you're on page 18. And the wise child doesn't seem so wise to me right now. It's more of a childish or naive wisdom. Is this wise? Is this chachma wise? Yeah, okay. Wait, hold on. Wisdom means you have a little patience, and you'll see how wise this question is. So let's think about the question. The wise child is then asking, how do you expect to find God in your subjective spiritual experience? If it's your spirituality, your titillation of your aspirations to be more heavenly and more godly and so on, then I'm sorry, it's not God. If it's really God, there's nothing else but Him. So as soon as it's your experience of Him, it's not the real thing anymore. So now, okay, we're going to get more explanation of that. Hold on. So to explain it, the Rebbe tells you these 3 things we said about testimonies, judgments, testimonies and decrees and judgments. Actually, they're not just 3 different types of mitzvahs. In every mitzvah that you do are these 3 elements. And the reason is because mitzvahs actually accomplish something. The point of a mitzvah, not the point of, what mitzvahs accomplish? Mitzvahs bring God into the world. Okay, you're going to tell me, well, of course God is here in the world. But I can tell you, yeah, have you ever had somebody sitting at your table or trying to have a conversation with somebody and the person is not there? So you can be there and not there. So God can be here in the world like it's a creation, yeah. Or He can be totally engaged and involved there. And then there's another thing. Yeah, He's here, but do people know that God is here? Do they feel that in everything in the world that this is something divine? There's a creator behind it? We don't feel that in our world. So there's 2 things we want. We want that God should be totally engaged here, and we want that it should be open. It should be disclosed, revealed, out in the open. So in this disclosure, this bringing God's light into the world, there's 3 steps. Going from how God is here within the world. First of all, in order for anything to exist, to have a form, to be, to have life, whatever it is, all of that is divine energy. What's behind gravity and electromagnetism and nuclear force and everything really is one single energy, which is divine. And we call it infinite light, but it comes in finite packages. In the language of Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's called the Or HaMamala, which literally means a light that fills, a filling light. We call it, how in English you would call it an immanent light. So God, as He is here now. But then God is the creator of the universe. If He's the creator, then means He stands beyond it. He transcends it totally. And to Him, the world is, you could say, a fantasy, because if you would decide that it doesn't exist, so then it doesn't exist, and it never would have existed. And so you have another idea of God. Not God as He's immanently here, but now God is totally, entirely transcends all of our reality and all of existence. That we call how God is makif. He encompasses the world. Sort of like a thought that you have in your mind, and your mind encompasses this idea, and if you would stop thinking about it, it would be gone. As opposed to something that you're totally invested in, you can't pull yourself out of it. So God is both here now and totally transcendent and beyond it at the same time. So the second, being beyond, we call that the Or HaSovev, or Makif. He surrounds or encompasses everything. So as God is invested here within the world, that's reflected in the judgments and the mishpatim, these judgments where God says, I want you to take care of the world. I care about this world. I want it to be a nice world, harmonious world. People shouldn't steal from each other. People should be nice to each other. They should honor their parents. They should have good marriages. And so those things make sense to us. We see that there's a God in this world who cares about this world. And that's God as He is immanently here now. That's reflected in these mishpatim, these judgments. Then God also wants you to know Him as He totally transcends this world. He's totally beyond this world. How does He do that? He tells you, there are things that I want you to do, and you're not going to understand them. You'll come to some understanding, but you really feel, and you'll know that that's not really what they're about. And that's these chukim, these decrees. And actually, in every mitzvah, you have some aspect about it that you're going to understand. Because in whatever chukim, these decrees, you'll be able to find some sort of reasoning behind them, or at least you'll know that there is a reason, but you don't know about it, but God has a reason for it. Or you'll reason that, well, God wants us to have things that we do that we should not understand, because He wants to communicate to us that He totally transcends this world. He wants us to have a relationship with Him as He is entirely beyond this world. And we should bring that also into the world, His transcendence into the world as well. And that's the chukim aspect of mitzvahs, which means that even in the mitzvahs that you do, that you have to feel them and understand them, you should also know that I really don't understand what they're really about. Really, there's something much more behind it, and it's something I don't understand. You have to feel the transcendence of those as well. So the things, those that are totally transcendental, you have to feel how they belong here. There is a reason behind them. I have to feel transcendence within this world. And those things that make sense to you, you have to feel that really they're beyond your intellect as well. You have to feel that part of them. And in the details of them, this the Rambam points out, the Mor Nevuchim in the Guide for the Perplexed, that the details of these mishpatim, of these judgments, you'll find things that are, this is just the way it is. Yeah. Somebody just asked a question, why do we read about 4 children instead of 1 child with 4 questions? Okay. I'm telling you, in each child there are many, many questions, and each child is the diametric opposite of all the other 3. And well, there's a whole discussion on each other child, which you'll find very fascinating. I've written an article on the wicked child, an article on the one that doesn't ask questions. I haven't written on the simple child yet, because that's the most beautiful one. We'll get to it. Okay, so the third thing that's missing now, explain what are the judgments about, what are the decrees about, what are these testimonies about. So testimonies is because we talked about God as being immanently here now, and God being transcendent and beyond. So which one is he? Well, those are just two modalities for him. One modality as he's sustaining the world, giving life to the world, totally invested in the world. One modality is totally beyond this world, it's just a fantasy. Those are just two modalities. He himself, who is he? Well, one thing we know about him is he could be either. He can be what he wants. He can be here now, and he can be totally beyond it. He can be both at the same time. So he's neither of those. But he can choose to be both at the same time. To be both at the same time. He totally transcends both of them. He's totally beyond that. In other words, if you would know everything about this universe, you would still be no closer to knowing God. You'd be in wonder and awe, but you know who he is? No, because the sum total of this universe is not God. It's just creation. He could have created another universe, completely different universe. Like instead of even using time and space, he'd come up with something else. What? Think of something besides time and space. Well, he could have, but we wouldn't know. We couldn't know it. So therefore, we can't know who he is as creator, because he's totally unbounded. He can do whatever he wants. So we'll say, well, he's not anything of this world. This world is finite. This world only lasts for a certain amount of time. Everything in this world decays. It goes away. Nothing in this world has to be. So therefore, God, and I deduce, therefore, that God is beyond all of this. Saying God is beyond all of this is still limiting him, because I'm still only measuring by what I know. Instead of inducing what he is inductively, I'm deductively saying he's not any of this. So I'm still defining him by what this world is and saying he's not that. So it's still a certain definition. He's not this. It's still a definition. It comes out that there is no way to deduce who is God using the intellect. God is not an idea. So in Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi founded Chabad. What he writes like this, he says, to say that God cannot be understood is absurd. It's as absurd and infinitely more absurd than saying that a certain idea is so deep that I can't touch it with my hands. You say an idea is deep, you can't touch it with your hands. It's ridiculous. That's absurd. Ideas, you don't touch ideas with your hand. They're ideas. Hands are for touching things, not ideas. So the same thing, you can't say, I can't understand God. What's God got to do with understanding? God created understanding. God created reason. They're his fictions. He came up with them. So what are you saying you can't understand? What does that mean? Even when you say you can't touch an idea, well, ideas are creation and tactile objects are creations, or at least they're both bounded, finite creations. Here you're talking about creator and creation. Creation can't understand its creator. Like my MacBook Pro over here, or the camera that's there, if I had created it, they couldn't understand me. And I'm finite, and they are finite. You're talking about an infinite, unbounded creator could create anything, and a creation, well, they can't understand one another. So how does that get expressed into the world? God wants not just his immanence, not just his transcendence, but his very essence as he is. That also should be expressed in the world. So how does it get expressed? It gets expressed through these testimonies. Why Edus? In Edus, you see something very fascinating about Edus. In Edus, God doesn't say, like with Chukim, you can't understand me. Chukim say, in this case you can't understand. I just decided you can't understand this. And this goes in, we go into depth in this in 4b, but I'm just going to explain it in my own words for now, because it gets very complex in there. But basically like this. As soon as God is saying, you can't understand me, he's being transcended, but in a certain way, it's a posture of compromise. Because he's first of all saying that there is a relationship over here. There's something that cannot be that's beyond your understanding. So it has some relationship to understanding that I can say you can't understand it. Like you wouldn't say to if you say to somebody, well, you're just so ignorant. That means that I'm smarter, you're ignorant. To somebody who's a little child, you don't say you're ignorant, because what's the comparison over here? You say to somebody who's also an adult that he's ignorant. Well, you don't say that because it's insulting him, but just for comparison purposes. So for God to say, you can't understand this, is already a posture of descent, putting himself in a relationship, saying, I transcend this world. Transcend this world. So you have a relationship, you transcend it. But furthermore, by saying, you cannot understand me, God is saying there's a certain place where I am not. Where? In your intellect. I don't fit there. So like when the Zohar says, no thought can grasp him, so just a minute, that means that there's a place where God is not. It was an intellect. How could you say there's a place where God is not? God creates everything. Everything comes from him. He's everywhere. So you have to say that God himself, in his essence, can also be found within your thoughts, within your intellect, within your understanding. How can he be found there? Well, you see, in these edus, in these testimonies. Testimonies are God saying, you don't have to understand this, but if you want, it makes sense. I don't have a problem with it making sense to you. I can be anywhere. I'm God. I'm beyond being transcendent. So I can be found within your intellect as well. That gets deep. Now I'm going to pause it. There's a question over here. I'm going to read the question before we go on to basically 6 is what we're on to now. Somebody asked, so the 3 types of mitzvahs are sort of like invitations or open doors to know God on different levels while being here on earth. This is why we do, so we can keep understanding open, and experiences will allow us to go deeper with each mitzvah. Okay, so somebody's on the ball over here, yeah. So it goes this way. There's an order to the mitzvahs, and now we understand the order. There's an order of inviting God into the world. Good. Open invitations for God, opening the doors for him, bringing him down. Okay. The first step is edus, testimony. What's testimony? There's a Jew in the world. That's testimony that God exists. I mean, the very fact that there being one Jew walking the face of the earth still at this point in time, or even 1,000 years ago, or at any point in time, there's got to be a God in the world. Otherwise, like, how could we possibly exist? So people see Jews, they know there must be a God. I don't know, what are these people doing around? Every year we say they can't last more than another 50 years, and they're still here. Okay, so we know there's a God in the world. What, who, how, there's nothing of that yet. But that's just by existing. A Jew is testimony that there is a God in the world. When it comes to your Pesach Seder, you've got your matzah. That's testimony there's a God in the world. You've got your cups of wine. It's testimony, because of the Exodus and so on. But if there weren't a Jew there, then the whole thing is not a testimony. Because somebody else can't say, this is the poor man's bread that our fathers ate when they left Egypt. Only a Jew can say that, because our forefathers left Egypt. So for us, it makes sense to say that. So by the Jew eating the matzah, that's testimony that there's a God in the world. Okay, but it's just God, so to speak, in the raw. the quintessential just God as he is. That's the first invitation. Next comes God as he's totally transcendent of this world, beyond the world. How does he express that? There are mitzvahs that you do just because I say that you do them. Okay? That's bringing him more into the world. And like the Rambam says, Maimonides says that a Jew shouldn't say, I can't stand this taste of meat and milk mixed together. It's just yucky. Or I don't like pork. Pork sticks. Or I don't like wearing wool and linen together because it's itchy. No, a Jew shouldn't say that. A Jew should say, I would love to try a bacon and eggs. I'd love to wear wool and linen together. It's probably very nice. But what can I do? God says not to do it. That's the chukim, the decree aspect of mitzvahs. Then there's another aspect of mitzvahs where it has to make sense to you. You got to bring God now totally into this world. Totally into this world. So, for example, you can't say, well, I have a mitzvah to care for my fellow human being. This person's not feeling well. I'm going to go visit him in the hospital. You can't go and say, when he says, oh, thank you so much for visiting me, you can't say to him, well, really, I don't really care anything about you. Whatever happens to you doesn't mean anything to me, but what can I do? God decreed that I have to come and visit you and care about you. So you can't say that, because you have to bring God into the world as he is a caring God, and he's here within the parameters of this world. And that's even with the chukim, with the decrees, and even with the testimonies. You have to bring him all the way here into our world of making sense, utilitarian world. That's the mishpatim, the judgment aspects of the mitzvahs. So now all of this is problematic. So that's the order, okay? It's bringing God step by step more and more into the world. And this is the problem. We'll get to the question in a second. This is the problem that the wise child has with this. Okay, we'll get to that. And here's a question. Not to ask a premature question, okay, maybe. How does this play into the whole idea of doing mitzvahs? Because Hashem wanted us to do it for us to have a relationship with him. If he is so much greater than him, greater than us. Okay? The whole idea of doing mitzvahs because Hashem wanted us to do it for us to have a relationship. Okay, so there's an idea that God wants us to do the mitzvahs for us to have a relationship with him, but he's so much greater than us. This person is perhaps the wise child. This is the wise child's question, and it's a premature question, so we're going to get to that. Okay. Now I have to explain to you. Now we're on number 7, part 7 here. If you're in the booklet, it's page 13, or just go down to part 7. And there's an essential thing here that's not explained in the mimer, but I have to explain to understand the mimer. Okay, there's 2 diametrically opposed concepts. There's the thing itself, and there's some sort of expression of the thing. We call it etzem. Well, an etzem in Hebrew is a bone, but they also use it to translate the Greek atom, like the thing itself, the core of it, what it is. Mahu. And then there is how it expresses itself. We call that its gilui. Our subjective experience of it, how we find it. In Hebrew, mitziut, or mitzias. Okay? Now, if you're having the thing itself there, that means you're not having a subjective experience of it. You're having it as what it is. If you're having your experience of it, how you find it, how you discover it, how it is out in the open, then it's not the thing itself, right? So, like if you know the other guy he's my friend, or he's my father, or he's my kid, then that's not him for himself. When I know myself, I know me from this is who I am. I am something besides being this person's friend, or this person's father, or this person's. I'm something else for myself. So we have the thing itself and the expression of the thing, the objective and the subjective, and it would seem impossible to have both at the same time. Okay, so now another thing. From that idea, that means you can do one of two things when it's talking about God. You could say, we want to have God here in our world, but we want to have God as He is God, totally beyond transcendent, no compromise, the Etzem, God in all His essence and being. Like Rabbi Shnei Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad, used to cry in his prayers. You could be heard saying, talking to God and saying, I don't want your world to come. I don't want your Garden of Eden. I don't want this great revelation or that revelation. All I want is just you. Just you. Okay? Just you. And by the way, when I remember the Rebbe saying those words at a Farbrengen more than once, and the Rebbe started sobbing while he's saying those words. So we're not just you. Okay, if it's just you, God as He just is, then I have to be out of the picture. Because if there's any sort of subjective experience of that, it's not Him as He is. Like if it's just Him, there's nothing else but Him. So what am I doing there? You can't do a selfie with God, in other words. If it's a subjective experience, then how can it be Him, the real Him? How can I have both? So how can I have the essence of God there and I'm still in the picture experiencing this? How can I have both? That's really the wise child's question. That's a difficult question. In the meantime, somebody else asked a question. How do the children discuss the four questions with one another? Did the wicked son ruin the rest of the Seder? No, the wicked son is essential to the Seder. You have to have him there. Make sure you invite one. They're the ones who put all the spice into it. It says in the Zohar that the wise son, or the tzaddik, has to make friends with the wicked in order to be really wise, to be a real tzaddik. Okay, so now we're on to what this child's quest, not wild child, the wise child's real question is. The wise child can understand, okay, God gave us these mitzvahs, and by doing these mitzvahs, God can be here now. Because He says, this is my will, desire, my innermost desire, so when it's being done, I am there, in all my raw, quintessential essence. Or God could say to me, okay, I want to have this relationship thing with you, and I want your subjective experience, and you'll bring me into your world through these testimonies and decrees and judgments, and more into your world, so on. Okay, and then I'm having the subjective experience of God. But how could you do both? You can't have your cake and eat it too, or your God and experience Him too. You can't have both. How? That's his question. And that's wisdom. That's true wisdom. Wisdom is in total awe and wonder of this. It's a paradox. It's an essential paradox within Torah. There's many times. The Rebbe does this all the time. The mimer is about finding this paradox. There's this paradox of two opposites that just don't fit together. The Rebbe finds it and points it out. And this paradox, the Rebbe doesn't resolve the paradox. The Rebbe says this paradox is a nexus of two opposites. At that point, you have an open window on God and His essence. Only when two things are completely diametrically opposed and they meet each other, that creates your window on God. And that's what wisdom is all about, this window on the infinite. Because he's experiencing a paradox. Okay, well, we haven't answered the question why he says you. We'll get to that. So, first of all, what are we answering this wise child? We're answering him, yeah, okay, you're right, there's a paradox. Good, very good point. But for the same reason that you say God can be here now through your doing this, because he's God, and that's what he desires. So for the same reason, he can be there within your subjective experience of him. Or to make it more vivid, you could be standing there and you're saying what we call the Shemona Esrei, the Amida, where you're talking straight to God and you're saying to him, you, please. And you're talking to him and you're recognizing that nothing else exists except for him. And he's totally in control of everything because there really is nothing else except for him. And yet, I am asking him, please do this and please do that, which are two complete opposites at once. And if it would be one way or the other way, it's not. You don't have the real essence of God. It's only because it's two opposites at once, therefore you have the real essence. And that's what God gave us when he gave us the Torah. He says, this is my desire. I desire to be found in this paradox. I want to be found in the world, just in the raw, but I also want it to be light. I want it to be experiential at the same time. I want it to be a relationship, but a relationship with my essence. Subjective and objective at the same time. I want that you should be experiencing that there's nothing else but God, and yet there's you experiencing it. And then the Rebbe goes on to say, because there you see that. You're saying it's l'tov lanu, it's good for us, and we do it because God says it to us. But you tell the child, it's for the very reason you explained, you're having a problem with. God commanded. God commanded us all of these decrees. A decree means something different over here. Decree doesn't mean like we explained decree before. The decree meaning when you have this subjective experience of God, like in your prayers, you're experiencing that there's nothing else but God. But how can I be experiencing that there's nothing else but God? If there's nothing else but God, what am I doing here? Okay, that sort of thing. Or you're saving somebody's life because God says so. But if it's God running the world, then why doesn't he save the person's life? Well, no, I have to do it. Well, so you have this paradox. So you have to be doing this, experiencing that this is a paradox, and the only reason I'm doing this is because God says to do it. Even when you understand why you are doing this, and it makes sense to you that it has to be done. And if you hadn't been told, you would still be doing it. But now when you are doing it, you have to be doing it because God says so. And you have to be feeling it because God says you have to feel it. And it has to make sense to you because God says it has to make sense to you. The relationship has to be also a sense of that very essence core of God being here now in all his essence. So it's those two opposites at once. The you part. So to get to the you, why he says you, that God has commanded you. So for this, the Rebbe says that really the wise child got the answer. I mean, he was there at the Seder last year and he got the answer explained to him. And he's a wise child. He gets this. But he knows that tonight is the night that you're leaving Egypt. If you're leaving Egypt, that means I am before the Torah is being given, and I'm going to re-experience the giving of the Torah. And every time I re-experience it, it's a rebirth. It has to be totally new to me. I'm now on a higher level. And on this higher level, the question arises all over again. It's a question that gets resolved at a certain point, but then by being resolved, it takes me up to a higher place. And then at this higher place, the question appears all over again. And getting to the answer, oh, now I resolve it, that took me to a higher place. Now I have to resolve it all over again. I go to a higher place. It's like going up a stairwell that's taking you higher and higher and higher and higher. And as you're moving up, there's a famous parable from the Baal Shem Tov, that as you're moving up the staircase, you feel, oh, I'm getting close to my destiny point, but then you pass the middle point on the staircase, and you feel, wait, I'm going further away from it. And then you turn, and you go up higher. Oh, now I'm getting close. And as you're getting higher and higher, wait, I'm getting further away from my destination point. And then you turn again, you're going this way. And the same thing happens. Each time on the way going up, at a certain point you feel the question arises all over again. And that's what wisdom is all about. Wisdom is a constant question. A wise person is not somebody who has answers. A wise person is somebody who constantly has questions, constantly in wonder, which is what Torah is about. Torah is all about asking the right questions. And who says that when you get to the core of the universe, there's a big exclamation mark over there with like number 42 or whatever. Maybe at the core of the universe is a big question mark. Well, that's what the wise child is saying. And that's why he's a child. He's constantly, after 3,300 and something years, he's still a child. He's still a child. Wisdom always remains a child because everything is constantly new to him. Every time he discovers, it wakens up the same, not just new questions, but the same questions become questions all over again. When the Rebbe finishes off the mimer, so was this the Rebbe now explained to us why he's saying you, because he's saying I'm before the giving of the Torah. You are my father. You're after the giving of the Torah. You need to explain this to me. You're the one bringing me up over here, bringing me up to this higher place. Where are we in the translation? I'm sorry, I sort of cut things short in order to get this done within an hour, which I did not accomplish. But we're basically finishing number 9, and we're around 10 over here. If you want to do this properly, you need really to take a few months to go through it with somebody else and ask all the questions. And actually, there is a series of classes that I gave a few years back on this mimer, but I gave it over a 4 or 5 week period or more. But this is, in general, the whole mimer. So now we understand why the child says, this wise child says you, and as I pointed out, in that statement you, in which he seems similar to the wicked child, that's what makes him wise. Because he's saying, this is new for me. For you, you're there already. But you have to explain this to me, who's just going through this experience now. The Rebbe connects this to the night of Passover, of Pesach. That's the birth of the Jewish nation. It says the exodus from Egypt was like birth pangs. All the slavery and everything was like a labor we had to go through for the Jewish people to be born in the womb of Egypt. And every year, the Jewish people are reborn on that night. We go through this birthing experience. So all of us are at that moment just a child being born. That's the night of Pesach is about education. The center of the Seder is always the child, or the child within us. That's what we're aiming for. So all of us become this child at that point. I just saw my grandchild this afternoon, is just born, and the entire world is totally new for him. Totally new. And that's how it's supposed to be for us on the night of Passover. The world is new. I was just born. I just entered reality. When the Rebbe ends off, talks about this redemption, this new birth, the Rebbe says that it relates not just to the wise child, it's going higher and higher. It relates to every Jewish person, even the one who really is sunk there in Egypt and needs to be pulled out. Each one of us, as a wise child, it's always this new leap. So, but for every Jew on Passover, it's a whole new leap. You enter into an entirely new world of wonder. The Rebbe ends off that so it should be for us. Just as in the days that you left Egypt, I'll show them wonders. We're going to have this exodus that leaps from one extreme to the other, out of this multiply intense darkness of exile. It's very much like a birth, because you look at the world and you see that there is something amazing forming within this world. That compared to how the world was just 200 years ago, this is a totally amazing world. But it's also a mess. And so you see it's as though there's like a baby inside. They're looking at a baby inside this mommy's tummy. And like there's a whole person inside there, but how on earth is that person going to get out of there? I don't see any way. So that's the situation we're in now. We're in a world where everything is there and ripe and ready for nobody really having to work too much, and it's just a world of wisdom and harmony, everything there in place. But the world's in such a mess, like how on earth is this going to get out of here? Okay, so it's a leap, just like in the Exodus from Egypt was this leap, and just like the wise child is going through this leap, and all of us go through this leap. That's what Passover, it's Pesach, means to jump over. There's this leap that the child goes through, and there's this birth canal, just leaping out of being just another limb of its mother to being its own being, its own being. And especially in the generations that are called the heels of Mashiach, we're called heels, when the darkness is even greater, this is the time when we should come immediately to the revelation of the glory of God will be revealed, and all flesh will see. In other words, it'll be God in all His essence, and nevertheless, it will be a subjective experience with our physical eyes. How physical eyes can see God? Don't ask me to explain. I don't know. But why not? God is everywhere, so He should be within the physical realm of sight as well. It's an article on that, the hidden God, on chabad.org. And sovereignty will be God. He will be God's with the coming of the righteous Mashiach, speedily in our days, mamish, in actuality. Any more questions? Yes, there are questions over here. Okay, let me go to the questions. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And you can, when we finish afterwards, you can still enter questions into the comment box, which I'll receive as reader comments and be able to answer there. But for now, let's go on a little while longer to look at some of these questions. Part 1.3. My question expresses what appears to me as a contradiction in my understanding of the Mimer in paragraph 7 and 8. Okay. I'm quoting from the text. Paragraph 7 teaches the divisions into Edot, Chukim, and Shpatim is another idea. Gilui, disclosing the godliness openly. And it goes through Edot subliminally, through Chukim transcendentally, through Mishpatim and Gilui that is absorbed inwardly. Okay. The only way that then, I guess this is where the contradiction seems to appear. The only way that the Hamshachot, this drawing of the mitzvot, can be with Gilui is when the performance of Edot Mishpatim is because they're simply God's commands, like the Chukim. This is in the answer to the wise child. Okay? The wise child is saying that this order, Edot, Chukim, Mishpatim, is an order of Gilui. It's subjective. Even Edot, which a testimony, just God is here, but it's here through my being here. So it may be subliminal, but it's opening the way to another type, to bring further down, at least opening the door towards them. Whereas what the wise child is thinking, well, if you want God just here, it can't even be any subjective experience. It would have to be here. I'll give you a good. This should help you in understanding this. When it comes to the offerings in the temple, you get this phrase several times that God says that it should be reach nichoach. Reach nichoach, a pleasant smell. So what is reach, a pleasant smell? What God likes, nice smell, barbecue smells. What's going on? So the rabbis explain, Rashi quotes this in his commentary, that God is saying, Naches ruach lefanai shamarti v'nai surutzeni. I have this pleasure from the fact that I said, and my will was done. What I want to point out from there is that God doesn't say, I had pleasure from you doing my will. He says, I have pleasure from, I said, and my will was done. which means that you're not in the picture at all. And therefore, this is the ultimate of there is nothing else but God. The ultimate expression, because there's no person even doing it. It just was done. Who are you? You're an agent of it being done, but you're not really there. So the wise child is understanding, yeah, that's it. That's the ultimate expression of God. When it's just done, and I'm not in the picture. That's the ultimate expression. This order of Gilui, of bringing God into the subjective experience, then I'm there in the picture. Then it's diluted. So we answer the wise child and we say, yeah, when you are going through this subjective experience, the subjective experience, Edot, Chutkim, Mishpatim, do it with this sense of, I'm not here. It's just, I'm doing it just because God says so, and it needs to be done. Even the subjective aspect of it. So that's what you're asking. How could it be that in paragraph 7 it appears that the division of mitzvot is the depending factor of Gilui, also referred to pratim, the details of the mitzvah earlier, Maimer's expressed. In paragraph 8 it appears that the general reason, the fact that all mitzvah commandments of Hashem. Okay, yeah. But in the Maimer, the word chukim, decrees, means two different things. When we say Edot, Chukim, Mishpatim, Chukim there means one thing, means an expression of God in a certain expression of Gilui, of his transcendence. When the father answers the child that God commanded all of these statutes, these decrees, he means something different by decrees. And that's actually in the footnote in the Hebrew, but I think I pointed that out in the translation itself, that we mean something different by statutes over here. Within 8, I think it's over there. By chukim, we're meaning to tell the child that not this transcendent experience of God as he's transcendent, but just do it as though you were not there. That there's nothing else but him, even within the subjective experience, which, as I said, is paradoxical. But that's what you're telling the child to do. I hope that's making some more sense to you. Just understanding that the word chukim here and the word chukim here mean two different things. Yeah, I put that in part 8. I said that here the word chukim doesn't refer to a specific form of mitzvah. It refers to the general intent we have in every mitzvah, that we do it because it is God's will, even those things that make sense to us. Okay? One more question over here. Why do we wish for Mashiach instead of God directly? Yeah, good. Sometimes we say we're wishing for Mashiach. Sometimes we say we're wishing for Geula. Mashiach is like Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was the first Mashiach. King David almost made it as a Mashiach. Ezra could have been Mashiach, before Mechizkiah. Different people who almost made it. So Mashiach is a Moshe Rabbeinu. We're waiting for God to send somebody who will be our leader, who is the heartbeat of the Jewish people. And we're waiting for the times of Mashiach, when he will teach us this essence of the Torah. And once we've been taught, as Mashiach is a teacher, once we've been taught all of these things, then we will come at that point to actually see godliness. So we need that leadership, first of all, to unite the Jewish people. This is an amazing thing. To unite the Jewish people, and then to teach us and get us to open our eyes and to be able to see. And then after the times of Mashiach come a time of the seventh millennia, when is a world totally beyond our world and all eyes just see openly godliness. We have a time of Shabbos forever and ever. Thank you for everybody for coming to this broadcast. We're hoping that in the near future we'll be able to have weekly classes. In the meantime, appreciate you can put whatever comments you have in the comment box. Discuss the Mimer and keep learning it and go on and on forever. Also go to jnet.org/11. There's a campaign over there, a Mitzvot. There's a prize. And we're basically trying to enlist more people to learn with others, or people who want to learn with others through JNet. It's a wonderful service. Jews who are isolated or just don't have the time to come for classes or whatever can learn one-on-one with somebody else by phone, by video conference. And we're looking both for people who want to learn, people who want to teach. Well, there's no such thing as teaching in the Jewish world. You're always learning. But people can offer their knowledge, and people are looking for the knowledge in both ways. So go to jnet.org, and especially jnet.org/11. There's 3 questions, there's 2 prizes, or just keep on learning the Mimer as well. And please also visit Chabad.org. Thank you, everybody, for tonight, and wishing everybody a wondrous, liberating, great leap this Passover.